everyone. Welcome to the Revenue Growth Architects podcast. It's Chrissy and Charlie here from CS2, and we have 3 great topics to talk about today. So we're going to get straight to it. The first one, it's not really a shocker, but we're going to be talking about AI. And one of the things that we notice is anytime we have like AI or AI tool, recently, all of you guys very much are interested in that content. And we probably won't talk about AI every single time or in all of our content, but definitely is top of mind for folks, which makes sense. If you go on LinkedIn, it's just everywhere, and it's infiltrating, the media and all of our lives. So, very top of mind.
And it can also feel like you're always falling behind because there's a lot of, I don't know, I would put it almost a little bit of exaggeration on LinkedIn, I think, about how much people have automated away. And like, I think that's what I posted yesterday that I quite liked, because someone said something along the lines of, can you stop just renaming your workflows or automation as agents, right? I think that's kind of funny because it's like everything's an agent now. And not to get me wrong, I'm very bullish on AI and everything it can do for us, but I do think there's a lot out there that's a little bit sensationalized. So
we're
trying
fake as
yeah. So it's tough to kind of separate the useful from the sensationalized content. Hopefully we're trying to find that balance of just bringing to our listeners actually what we're seeing on the front lines with clients, what's working, what's not working, in like real life examples, and also some of the ways that you need to still focus on not just AI, right? Like there's still a lot in the world that isn't AI. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about in one of the sections today, right?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. Like, I feel like also we see it with some of our clients with certain tools or just AI in general. They're always like, we need to do a demo of this or we need to look at that. And it's like, well, is that coming from a place of you're very much interested and you have a use case of efficient where you want to be more efficient or something like that? Or is it just this feeling of FOMO and falling behind? And I think if you dive into what people are really doing, it's still very new. People are still figuring it out. And if you think about how hard it is to get anything done and changed within an org, it's a very unique set of people that actually can dive deep practically into AI and use it in their day-to-day at their company. So that brings us to the topic though, because one thing that a lot of go-to-market folks, but just everyone in general, is like, how can I use AI to be more efficient? That's like the number one thing. We're being told that AI is going to steal all of our jobs. And so teams are thinking, well, how can I get the most out of AI? But the problem is, there's probably a lot of things that they could just do now in operations specifically too, that could make them more efficient without AI at all. And so thought we wanted to talk about that with efficiency on everyone's mind. So yeah. So Charlie, what do you think? Like, what are some things that you think would be a better place to focus in terms of efficiency without using AI?
Well, I just kind of find it hilarious, some of this stuff, because everyone's got the remit to use AI and everything they can to get more efficient. I think that's good, right? Like try and throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, and just try and do as much as you can to stay ahead. I think that's good advice across all of the domains of your career, right? Like just try and keep ahead and keep trying things and try and not just get set in your ways. But what's kind of funny to me is that it's almost like everyone's forgotten that there's other ways to be efficient, and there's a lot of other it's not just AI that drives efficiency. It's kind of like that's the only like, it's just like if there's a pie chart, it's like how to drive efficiency, the whole thing is just like using AI. But it's like, no, like maybe a good amount of it is, but there's still so much of that pie chart that is filled up with all the stuff ops people have been doing forever, right? Like a lot of the point of operations is to drive efficiency, right? We're doing process and automation and workflows and standardized processes and templates and all of this stuff to try and make the marketing team more efficient, the sales team more efficient, the whole go-to-market more efficient. And I think we just can't lose sight of there's all of these
Mhm.
other ways that could maybe even drive more efficiency. And I think there's so many examples that you could come up with for this, but just one simple example is like, okay, trying to make the sales team more efficient. Yeah, you can plug in an AI tool that can like, look at all the signals and look at all the data and try and spit out like the right email to send or something like that, like a simple use case like that. But that is so reliant on you collecting the signals the right way. You have the right data on the person that's being ingested into your systems. You've got the right integrations that are set up to be able to enrich the data the right way. AI can't just like magic something out of nothing, right? Or you might find that some leads aren't even getting to sales. Like there's a sync error, right? Unlocking that sync error and actually getting those people into the hands of sales can probably drive more efficiency and more value than just like trying to add on AI at the end. So it's like, as we talk about this a lot, like there's so much in the foundation of what you do that is going to be driving efficiency, making things better, and then setting you up to be more successful with the AI use cases. You can't just skip ahead. And
Yeah.
it's not like, and again, I think in the past we framed this as get the foundation ready so you can use AI. But I think there's like an additional piece to that, which is get the foundation ready. You're going to drive tons of efficiencies there in just doing that, right? Having like a better lead flow, a better sales follow-up process, better data, all that's going to drive efficiency. You've already made things like 5 times more efficient by solving that. Now superpower it with AI, but at least acknowledge that you've got some wins before you even got to the AI point.
Yeah, I almost feel like people, yes, we need to focus on efficiency, but we also want to focus on like efficacy. Yeah, it's just like what is actually like useful, what's going to provide good results and things like that. Cuz part of the problem too, if you don't trust AI or if it's something very new or you're just like putting something in the hands of, an agent that you might still feel like you need to monitor it and so then that's not really that efficient because now you're doing something manual where you're having to go through and monitor and check for false positives or you're having to check for is the AI going delusional or whatever. So I don't know. I think it's being mindful of like there's time and places, but how can you first make things better just with like the tools that you have? And that's kind of my example or my idea too is like there's ways that you can be efficient just within the tools that you have and like using them the right way. A lot of the time we look at clients and they have a tech stack and tools and they're not even using it to the best of their abilities. They're doing things like they have a CRM and a marketing automation platform that can 100% sync together efficiently if they wanted, but then they're doing these roundabout ways to like go bypass that or get people into this other system with this other tool, da, 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 da. And it's just like or manually importing people into a campaign in Salesforce because of XYZ thing that they just haven't spent the time to figure out. And
And
you
by the
know
way, what Chris is saying there is an actual example there. So, like a client that I've been working with recently, one person was spending most of their week trying to load lists into Salesforce
yeah.
because they didn't have the HubSpot Salesforce integration set up and no processes in there. They had to like dedupe and find the right accounts to add the contacts into, scrub the list, and do all of this data work. And that was taking up a ton of their time, like a senior person on the sales ops side. Now, we set up the HubSpot integration. We got some processes like set up now. So when you import a list, all we have to do is import the list. It's like scrubbing some of the data, making sure that it's ready to be able to get routed, all that kind of stuff, and then sync. That's completely saved tons of hours every single week for that person. AI didn't play into that whatsoever. So I think this is to my point. Let's not forget that you can save lots of expensive people hours by doing pretty simple things still for most companies that we're dealing with in like the startup to scale up B2B SaaS world. There's still a lot of room for growth and there's a lot of areas to improve. And yeah, don't like I've said many times, don't forget about AI. It's still important. Add AI use cases into the mix. But let's not forget about some of these more simple, more foundational things and how important they are to drive efficiency. There's not just one way to drive efficiency.
Do you have any other can you think of another specific example? I know we talked about a few there. Do you have any more?
I mean, one that comes to mind is around like sales prioritization, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think you could completely think that AI can prioritize the right people to go outbound to, or the right inbound, you know, ready to work leads and contacts that you should be following up on, like with a scoring model, and I just like plug AI in, and it'll just figure it out for me. Now, maybe it can help you get there, like as like that end point. But there's a lot that you probably need to figure out before that around like your ICP, making sure you even have the data. So, like, say your ICP is financial services above a billion or whatever in revenue. Now, if every record that's coming into database doesn't have that data, and you haven't set up enrichment, and then your AI is just trying to figure out if this person's the right person to prioritize or not, it might have a bit of a harder job to be able to do that. But then also, even before you get there, right? Like right now, still, like to this day, so many companies are sending everything to sales. Someone sneezes on your website, send them to sales. And it's actually getting worse in this era of signals, where it's like
It
before it
is
used to
getting
be
worse. Yeah.
have scoring, they've got to hit a certain threshold, and now send them to sales. Now, when it's signals, it's kind of given the permission to be like, okay, this person hasn't even engaged with me. They've got some kind of signal. Let's send them. And I think there's a lot of positive in that. But like anything, it can be
But it's not really a
completely abused.
signal when you're just saying that they're all just doing a activity. It's like, well, then
Or it
there's
could
no
be like,
thought.
yeah, but we show like the accounts, like, been acquired, or they've changed their job. There's all these other signals. So I think there are some good things in there,
Yeah.
but like anything, it can be abused. And like now we're just still sending everything to sales. And we did a survey. One of the clients that I'm a bit like closer working with, we surveyed their SDR team, and we're like, hey, how many of what you get is actually good? And the results were very interesting, because a lot of what they were getting was not very good and wasn't converting. And we could see that in the data, but it was good to hear it from the SDRs. And that's like, 10-person team or whatever, wasting hours and hours and hours because they're trying to follow up. And yes, you could plug an AI SDR in and just like go crazy. I don't think we're there yet completely to just like autonomously let an SDR agent handle everything. But we've also found there was a lot of reasons why some of those leads were getting sent to sales that weren't even because of anything. Like, it wasn't like actually was what was even meant to happen. They were just like weird data issues, or they weren't like resetting the score, so like the people just kept on coming through over and over again. So it's just like this other example of just like, okay, just the core op stuff that we've been focusing on for a long time can still provide a lot of value, save a lot of time, drive a lot of efficiency, get your data in a better place to then be able to leverage AI even better.
And there's like
Yeah,
a two-step kind of thing as well. It's like I see it better as like nail like a foundational thing that you can do with your systems. And then if you are ready to then make it better, look at how AI can just like add on and make it better. So to your point around like scoring
totally. Yeah,
and like I think a lot of people still to this day, like you said, are sending everything to sales, or they do these like manual like reviews and stuff. And it's like you could just build out segmentation based on your ICP, but I think people just don't trust that. And then that makes it feel like, okay, well, or they just don't bother to do it. Maybe they don't have the ops support to do it. Well, that could be also a use case where maybe you even just use AI to help you figure out what titles you should include and things like that. Maybe you're not actually using like a AI tool to then go and find data that you don't have access to, tell you if they're in your persona. You could very much do that as well. You could do something like that with Clay and whatnot. But like you don't have to do that. And actually it'd be better to just start out with something useful and automated with the tool you have and then see how that works. And then if you still feel like you could do more and your segmentation is just not enough based on like the data you have, like go and look into another tool. But you have to remember that when you get a tool, when you have a process that involves a tool, like you need to have an owner for that. You need to have someone looking at it. You need to have someone own, you know, reviewing it and so forth. So do you have the resources where some of those other things where it's already a tool that your team knows and they can manage? like it might be worth just figuring out like how you can get the most out of that. And I don't want that to be like a closed way of thinking and say like don't try and push the boundaries. No, it just like focus on the core foundations first, and then if you are able to level up and you have the resources of people to do it, do it. I love that idea.
Yeah. So let's move on to the second topic. I want to tee this one up for you.
Okay.
It's like a topic that you like. So um, there's a sentence that I think strikes the most fear into any MOPS person, in that when you're like maybe interviewing for a job or even from our side, like when we hear this sentence, and that is IT owns Salesforce.
Yeah, or your tech, your whole tech stack.
Well, yeah. I mean, that would be even more worrying. Not to bash on IT, we love you, IT, but often once you get to that point, there are some hurdles,
Speaking of inefficiencies.
inefficiencies
Yeah.
to get things done. So in this section, we want to explore some ways that you can work around that.
Yeah.
I think you've got some good experience in some of the clients you've been working with, some of the more enterprise, much larger organizations where you've been working through a lot of this. So first off, do you agree? Is it like by and large a more difficult job to get stuff done when IT owns Salesforce, or is it more nuanced than that? Am I wrong? And then if so, what do you do about it?
It's more difficult, and probably for some of those orgs, maybe sometimes by design and sometimes not by design. Because I think it's their way of making sure that there's no tech debt, that everything that's put in won't break their systems. And they've gotten to a place where maybe they had all those issues and they need to put some governance around it, especially when you have a lot of people that can do things within the org. So is it harder to get stuff done? Yes. Does it have to be as hard as it is? Probably not. And I think sometimes it's not even huge orgs that have it too. But I do think there's a good mindset behind it where you want to have this like rigor and governance around like what goes into your systems. 100% like that's a great thought behind it. And you don't want a ton of tech debt and you don't want things breaking. You want to have a great process from sandbox to like deploying into production. But oftentimes what I see is that sometimes it can just slow down like very simple things. So I'll give an example with IT. One, it's when they're supporting so many different like groups, specifically sales and marketing, but there could be other group, customer success and so forth. It's hard to get onto their roadmap. And so oftentimes you'll be told, "Oh, actually we're doing this big CPQ project and everyone's doing it and it's going to take like 6 months. So we'll try and fit in your stuff in between the time that we have." Um and that can be challenging because you're like, well, who gets to decide like, what's more important than the other? It just feels like it goes like slow for just resources sake. Um, the second thing I would say, it also makes it so that the operators, especially marketing operators and so forth, like have their hands tied a little bit, and they're just like dependent on that team to get anything done. So a more recent example was we saw with this client, they just needed fields created. And we even said like it's nothing, they've never been used before, they're brand new, we'll hide them, all this stuff. And from like our team building those fields in Sandbox and then like one flow, it that we fully tested and gave the whole sequence of how to deploy it. Uh, it took 4 weeks. They had 2 rounds of errors with like not mapping the fields, even though it was clearly in the documentation. And I think there's that level of telephone too when you're doing that this way, where it would have been so much easier if just someone was able to just do it themselves, and then also maybe, especially for low impact items like creating new fields, as long as like the team approves it and maybe you go through some level of like vetting with that team so that you can get those permissions to do it. And I feel like that might be better. I mean, I even saw with that same client, they have marketers who aren't even able to like basically edit things on a campaign, statuses and things like that, when that's kind of 100% part of the point. Like they need to be able to use campaigns. And so I just find that we need to be a bit more realistic around like putting in guardrails instead of just putting in red tape everywhere. Like we just, and but given that, we can't always change that scenario. So I know that there's probably just tips that we need to maybe make that a little bit easier. And I think that all comes down to like communication, education, and alignment. And so the more often you can meet with that team, the more often you can be clear of like why you need to do something a certain way, why it's important to the business, really build the use case, instead of just requesting. Also figured out ways where you can align your projects. So another example with this client is we figured out that they got a request from sales to consolidate a few of their opportunity stages. Marketing wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to redefine and create like a stage 0 meeting opportunity stage. And it just kind of worked out perfectly where we're like, okay, well, you're going to make that change anyway. So let's just do them both at the same time. And so that's why communication is really key, because if you really educate early and often of like all the things that you want to do and the change management, I think then you can align with each other. You can even figure out ways where you both can meet your own like shared projects and goals and get with what you need. But I also think maybe figuring out like a project manager. So if IT does have a project manager, someone that can be on like a weekly call with you and your team weekly to review like what's needed and get a status check, I think would be really useful.
Yeah, all of the above. I think it definitely comes from a good place. Like you said, they're trying to protect the systems from bad things happening, but I think it often goes too far and just creates just a lot of unnecessary stress. And like you said, I think the only option you really have is to build up that trust over time, try and stay aligned, and hopefully things get better as that opens up. But it definitely is an ongoing struggle for a lot of people. I was speaking to a potential client the other day, very much a similar situation that you were saying, maybe even worse in a certain way, because they were just trying to get some. I think it took them like 2 months just to get like one field in Salesforce,
Mm-hmm.
and then so I was like, well, like I don't think this is going to be a good fit for us coming in, because like we're the whole point of bringing on CS2 is that we come and build a lot of stuff for
Build,
you. Otherwise,
yeah,
like, what are we
change
doing?
stuff.
And if that's going to take like 6 months instead of one to get something done, then no one's going to be happy with that. So yeah, I think for those of you that are in it, it is tough. I don't think we have like a perfect, do this and it's going to completely change your existence. But I think, like Chrissy said, you've got to just keep working at it, build that trust. Try and get a sandbox that you can build stuff in and walk them through, do sandbox reviews, document
Yep.
things very heavily so they can see, show them that you've audited, you've done like a
Yes.
change review, like, okay, we've looked at all of the flows that might get impacted by this or fields.
That was another thing I was going to say. And I was actually going to save that for a future podcast, but doing a full on technical audit of what are all the things that need to be changed proactively, even if you didn't build it, is so useful for them, because it can, one, help them if they need to make those changes, or two, you may find, oh, it's actually not that much change, because they might say, like, we have all these things that need to be updated. And when you actually show them, then it might be,
And it just shows them that you
you
care and you
care.
give a
Yeah.
shit, and
Hmm.
you've done the work. Like, what they're trying to avoid is you building something and it ruining something they've already got,
Right.
or adding a lot of like tech debt or inefficiency to the system. But if you say, like, our team, our solutions architecture team does all of our Salesforce work, led by Allison, just does a really, really bloody good job at this. I think. Like, I think once we start working with IT teams, that trust does get built up really quickly. And I think it's because the IT team from the client can tell, they've only worked with us for a few weeks or like a month or so. They actually understand our Salesforce instance just as well as we do, because we've done like a full technical audit. And that builds up that trust, and they start to realize, okay, they're going to be good stewards of our system. They're not going to come in and ruin stuff. Where maybe particularly for the agency consulting side, I think some companies have been burned where people consultants come in and build some stuff and ghost, and it all falls apart. So yeah, I think that's really what you have to lean into. It's hard, you're busy, it's difficult, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you really take a strategic approach and like a real like development cycle approach to this work.
Yep.
So
also, killing them with kindness can go a long way too.
I'm glad you said with kindness. I thought you were going to say killing them.
No,
that might be an extreme thing to do.
Okay, like, winning them over with kindness. Let's not use the word kill in the workplace.
Yeah. Oh, and definitely don't try and go around them.
Oh, no.
Because if you go around them,
no,
get it'll always come out. They'll always find out, and then now that trust will never be resolved again. You're probably just
and don't put your agencies in that position too, where you're trying to go around them with an agency.
Yeah. And actually don't do that in any role.
Yeah.
Like this has happened to us maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times that I can I have a real tangible example of this where we've been brought on without us knowing as a political tool to try and get stuff done because they were struggling to get it done. Then they want us to kind of come in and like work around here and like get this built here, and like it's really uncomfortable for us. We don't like it. It doesn't ever really work out that great for anyone involved. So please don't put agencies in that. Out of the over hundreds of like engagements we've had, like it happens very rarely. But I do think maybe it happens more internally, like the leader of marketing being like to the ops person, just go, like, can we just build this thing like without people, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like those chats maybe happen a bit more. And if you're trying to do that, I think that's going to come bite everyone back in the ass, honestly. So avoid.
Yes, I will. All right. Last thing, we want to talk about our onboarding assessment process. We've had a lot of different kind of assessments over the years. Well, I would say a lot, but we've always been refining it. And we feel like we've got one to a really great place in terms of speed, being able to build an effective roadmap, and then also finding quick wins, which is something that I think a lot of ops people can just do internally at their own org. Especially if you're new, this is a great thing to do. You probably try and do something similar when you first come on board. If you've had like a reorg and you have like a RevOps team, you're trying to define roles, it's another great thing to do. So I thought it'd be great for Charlie to walk through a little bit of the onboarding assessment process. And for background, when we bring on a new client, they go through this and we use it to build out the roadmap. And right now it's taking about, depending on the time it takes to get like into their systems and so forth, it takes us around like 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks to complete. Of course, this is along with other stuff that we're doing, so it can be faster if you're doing it internally. But yeah, just want to kick it over to Charlie, who will talk it through.
All right. Let me share my screen. So I thought I'd start here. Like Chrissy said, I think what is useful with this is not just, for people to learn about what we do, but I think this is applicable if you start a new job, or maybe if you've been at a company for a while, how you can approach like building a roadmap. For us, the way that we work as a business is we're always on an ongoing contract with our clients. Once it, like, usually month to month ish. but our clients, when they come work with us, they're really committing to a long-term relationship where at the beginning, we need to figure out really what are the most high leverage things we're going to work on. And then we work on them month over month. We deploy that roadmap. We do the strategy and execution for all the projects. And then we find like projects, we keep on adding and refreshing the roadmap. So the first thing here is just like our onboarding process that I want to walk through, because the onboarding process is not just like onboarding us, getting access, understanding the system. It's also like an assessment and the road mapping process. So the first phase of the onboarding is just getting like the access set up, getting the teams introduced, making sure we have all of that squared away. So that's all, we need that. But then the next phase within phase one, it's like kind of phase 1B, is gathering as much of the documentation that the client has existing, and also just trying to gather some information to help us shortcut some discovery. So in that, we have this sheet where I'm not going to go through like everything line by line in here, but we send this to a client, and these are the types of documentation that we're requesting. Things like, send us your UTM builder, your lead source documentation, your stages documentation. Like, send us the latest board deck that you've presented, any goals you have, stuff like that. So we can really start to understand, like, okay, like for example, from the board deck, that we can understand like what kind of reporting are they looking at, or they have, maybe where some of the gaps are, what are their goals, what are they trying to do as an organization. A lot of our clients don't have a lot of this stuff when we start with them, so they can just say, "Oh, we don't have it." But trying to get an understanding of what exists at the beginning is useful, and also understanding what doesn't exist is really useful too. So we also ask for the stakeholders. So getting a list of all the stakeholders. If you have a race matrix, so we can understand, okay, who needs to be responsible for different things or just informed. We get a detailed breakdown of all of the different tools in the tech stack. And then we ask for any reports or dashboards the client currently uses. So most of our clients come to work with CS2 because they want reporting. It's usually like, if you look at like go-to-market ops framework, there's like the foundation that they're trying to build, but then they always want to be able to get like that unified go-to-market reporting, maybe with our custom object, multi-touch distribution reporting, account-based reporting, all of that kind of stuff. But usually they have some reporting that they're using today. So like I always say to my team, and I always think this, show me a report a client's using, and I can understand so much more about their instance than maybe what you'd expect just from looking at a report, right? Like, show me a lifecycle report or a conversion rate report or a stage report. Do they have the day stamps on there? What are their stages? Is it a lead report or a contact report in Salesforce? Is it a customer? Like, you can is there data issues? Like, do they have like mismatches on the source or sourcing information? Are they not using campaigns? Like, all of this stuff you can see in reporting. So once we get a list of the reports, we dig into that. Yes, so usually our clients don't have a data dictionary, but understanding which fields are the right ones to use. So usually what our clients do have is like 25 fields that are trying to say the same thing. So knowing like which one is the one that actually are they using is really helpful, because we do a data analysis of all of these fields. And the last thing is we have a lot of these technical discovery questions. I won't go through all of them here, but it helps us really shortcut the understanding of that instance. So there's a lot of stuff that we can find out by actually doing our own digging. But because we want this process to be pretty quick, asking the question just so we can get that information from the horse's mouth, so to speak, quickly, this really shortcuts us to be able to get there. If the client doesn't have the answer, we'll go find out the answer, but it really helps us get there quick. Some of the examples of how this whole process speeds things up is like from the reporting side, right? Like, there could be hundreds of reports in Salesforce, hundreds of dashboards, but like, how do we know which ones the ones you're actually using? The client shows us the ones they're using. That even just that can save us hours of like digging through, trying to figure out which ones are being used and which ones are not. So the lesson here is, before you even go around getting into the systems, there's like a bit of pre-work that you want to do to be able to get an understanding of like where to look, where some of the issues are from people who might have worked there already. What field should I be looking at? What report should I be looking at? And that can save you a massive amount of time. Like in the past, we would always just dive right in and do the assessment, and it would take a long time, maybe double the length it's taking now. Now with this step in the process, it maybe adds like 2 to 3 hours onto the plate of the client. And it always comes up on the onboarding calls. The client's like, oh, this looks like a lot of work. And I go, okay, I promise you, every time we've done this loads now, the client will always come back and say, actually, it wasn't that bad. It took me like a couple of hours. And then I speak to them afterwards and I say, how long did it take you? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It took me a couple of hours. Their couple of hours can save us like 20 hours, because we're not trying to click around everything, trying to figure everything out. We know where to zero in and look. So really encourage people to take that step. If you're like a new person in the company, just go through the work of just gathering information first. The next step then is we do our own analysis. So I'm not going to go through every section here, but we have, I think there's 81 different things that we look through. And some of these are just like reviewing some of the survey questions, which I'll talk about in a second. But there's, we look through like data capture and campaign operations, communication orchestration, source and campaign attribution data, sales ready, qualification and scoring data, sales handoff. All this is like different sales tech, Salesforce architecture audit, stages, lifecycle funnel data, ABM, analytics framework. And once we go through all of these things, we have a way that we analyze and review each of these items. We note down the current state on like a needs work developing proficient matrix. And then we will add the findings, analysis, and recommendations and any images. So that's our detailed review of all of the different things. And if you go to look at our go-to-market operations framework, you'll see a lot of these items that I just talked about there are the boxes on that framework. Like we're trying to look at all the different components of the system. Imagine you're getting your car, like audited essentially, and like you're going to look at the gearbox, the transmission, the tires. Like it's like this is all those different things that we look at and give an assessment on. The other thing as well, actually, that I'll come back on is the survey. So we do the technical survey, but we also have a leadership survey. This is usually done by like a typed form or something like that, not in the Google Sheet. So it can be more anonymous and we can get leadership feedback. And then it's very much more high level, like what are your goals? What are some of your high level pain points as opposed to all the technical questions? That's just to make sure that we're aligning with leadership. Again, I would encourage, if you're starting a new job, do that, right? Like you want to hear from leadership. What are they trying to solve? What are their biggest issues? And how can we try and solve those? You don't want to be like, I'm going to go work on this random ops thing over here that might have no impact on what the business is really trying to achieve. So once we've got through the documentation gathering, the surveying, and our own discovery process, we then start building out our presentation, which will detail out what we've reviewed. And then we go into an executive summary. So this is really what we've heard from the client first, where we go, okay, like these are the pain points we're hearing from you for this is an example, like funnel and lead management inefficiencies, data enrichment. Like the clients really told us they want us to focus on reporting and data hygiene and accountability and how we're defining success. We then give a detailed analysis of like, okay, these are all of the findings and recommended projects at an executive level. So an exec can have like one slide of like, okay, this is what we're going to be focusing on, like for the first part of the roadmap. We have a link to all the details. So if someone wants to go look at all the details, they can. But then we get into the roadmap. So the first part of the roadmap is an effort impact matrix. Again, we've talked about different prioritization matrix for years now. Like pre-COVID, I feel like we were harping on about this. Like you build a roadmap. Use this type of effort impact matrix. We've tried lots of different ways to prioritize. We always come back to the effort impact. So I think it's the perfect way to get aligned. And like the top right quadrant with high impact, high effort, these are like your big roadmap projects. The top left quadrant, the higher impact but lower effort, these are the quick wins that are going to be valuable to the organization. Bottom right, If it's a higher effort but low impact, that's backlog. If there's stuff in there, you don't really want to work on it anytime soon. There's going to be much better things to work on. And then the same on the lower effort, lower impact. That's also should be added to the backlog. So we've gone through the survey, we've gone through the data collection, we've gone through our own discovery now, and then we've listed out these are the half a dozen to a dozen core projects or different items we want to work on, then prioritize them in this effort impact matrix, which can then, if I keep clicking through here, go into then our roadmap. So one of the things we like to do is code the different projects we're working on. So for us, we use, like in that effort impact, there's roadmap projects and quick wins. So for a roadmap project, we'll call like RP1. That'll be like that's a project on the roadmap. Here we have RP1A and RP1B. Essentially, it's like building out funnel lifecycle tracking using a custom object, and then building out the marketing sales stages, handoff, and process. Those two things are very interlinked. So we call this RP1A and B. And this isn't always like in necessarily like a prioritization order, but it can be. But I think coding them really helps. So when we're giving like our weekly updates or we're giving exec updates, we can be like, okay, RP1A, everyone knows what it means. It's the lifecycle project. This is where we're at with that project. And then, we give out these rough timelines. Like anyone in operations, like timelines and estimating are always really difficult. You always seem to like, this is really difficult to like really nail like how long something's going to take until you start getting into it. But we've been doing this long enough that we can give like some rough timelines on some of these for particular clients. Like this client, actually, we're deploying all of this tomorrow of recording. So on the 6th of June. So we're actually brought in this project over a month early for RP1A and B. So always under promise, over deliver is always a good technique too. And that's getting to the roadmap. The other thing is, within this, there's other projects that didn't get added to this initial stage of the roadmap. So that's going to be other things that we keep refreshing the roadmap with. So again, a roadmap is like a living document that you're going to want to update over and over as you work through the project. But it's, for this client, it took about 2.5 weeks to get to this point. And it's the most valuable, like 2.5 weeks of the engagement, really, because you've really figured out, you understand the org, you've aligned on the big projects, and now you're actually working on the high value work. And you've also shortcutted some of that work because you already know like some of the technical things within the whole go-to-market ecosystem or the go-to-market operations that you would need to find out anyway for each of these particular projects. So I know that's kind of a lot, and I've been on a bit of a rant here. So I'll see if Christy wants to add
No,
anything.
I think it's great. I think for those people who are thinking about like, okay, this is really great for an agency to do, and then what do I do in-house? But I think, like Charlie said, you could definitely run the same thing in-house, especially good if like you're a new leader or you're coming in new, or you're just like an org that's trying to like up level themselves. And I think a few things that you get out of it that we talk about all the time is, one, you get documentation, because if you're looking to find documentation on all those important things and you don't find it, it means that you need it. Or maybe it's all living in disparate systems, and at least you can have it kind of all in one place, which is so useful just for the org in general. And then getting some of that survey results back, I think is really great, because then you can really understand what are the needs and goals of the business, including leadership. And then having a long-term roadmap, because as we know, like opportunities can be just so reactive. And that's what sometimes can be a, a hindrance to them, because the whole org is wondering, like, what's that team doing? They're just doing these like things day to day. Like, what are they actually providing impact for like the whole business? And so if you do have that very high level long-term roadmap, but also still while maintaining like quick wins and stuff, I think that's a really great balance for how you can support the go-to-market team, and then also be able to show for it. It's something that you can report out on and give weekly updates to the whole go-to-market team. It just looks like you have your shit together, honestly. And you do if you're doing it that way. So I love it.
Yeah, I think that there are some agencies out there that start, and we've been guilty of this in the past. We start and you just dive right in.
Mm-hmm.
yes, that can work, and sometimes you have to just be scrappy and do that. I'm not criticizing anyone else, but for us, just taking a couple of extra weeks, a few extra weeks to like really understand the full org, understand where they're at, dig into all like those 60 to 80 things, so you can get a really good like understanding. Okay, if we build something new into this system, what else am I going to have to look at? Like, what is the state of everything else? Because it's such an interconnected system. You can't just like build something over here without worrying about what it's going to affect over here. And if you haven't looked at what's over here, you could totally cause a downstream issue. Um, so I'm pretty adamant that you have to do something like this if you start a new company or if you're onboarding a new consultant or agency. They should go through a process of really understanding everything that's set up, aligning with everyone's goals, and aligning with you on a roadmap. And if you're not doing that, I feel like you're kind of just like running a bit blind and
You're going to
just
end up doing it
doing.
anyway, right?
Yeah,
Or
or
if
it's
you don't,
random acts of
then
ops. It's
yes,
like
random
people
acts
always
of
talk
ops,
about
but also
random
if you,
acts of marketing, but it's random acts of ops. So just going around, you'll be like, oh, well, let's just fix like
yeah,
emails or something. It's like, okay, but like, was that like actually what's going to move the needle here?
yeah.
Like, so
Or you let people drive your roadmap for you, which is not strategic.
exactly, yeah, yeah. You're just an order taker.
Yeah. Um, Great. Well, I thought so many great pieces of advice in this episode. It was really good fun. So I hope the rest of you thought the same thing, and get a little bit of insight into some of our secret sauce here at CS2's. So thanks everyone for joining. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a colleague or friend, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Yeah. So yeah.